Every year, I watch the same quiet tragedy. A student who truly loved Japan would miss just one Japanese lesson because of work, family, travel, or simply life. They would come back the next week already behind. They would apologize, try to catch up, feel embarrassed, and a few weeks later, their chair would be empty. Not because they stopped loving Japanese, not because they were too old, not because their memory was broken. It is because the structure was never built for the reality of an adult life. And after seeing this happen again and again, I knew I couldn't keep teaching Japanese the same way. Konnichiwa, I'm Asuka, founder of Fun Japanese Learning and Nihongo Academy. Today's video is a little different. No grammar, no learning tips. This is a true story. The story of what I kept seeing in the classroom and what I eventually built because of it. If you've ever started learning Japanese as an adult and quietly given up, this story is for you. If you are new here, welcome. This channel explores Japanese as a way of seeing the world. So please subscribe if that interests you. Now let me take you back to the classroom. For almost 10 years, I taught Japanese at the British University in the adult education program. I loved it. My students were warm, curious people, and they had something younger students often don't, a deep personal reason to learn. Nobody was there for a test score. They were there because Japan meant something to them. Some loved Japanese literature. Some had family in Japan. Some wanted to travel and speak to people properly, not just point at the phrasebook. Some simply loved the sound, the culture, the feeling of entering another world. Teaching them was a joy. The classes grew. There were waiting lists. From the outside, it looked like everything was working. But inside that classroom, I kept seeing something I couldn't forget. A devoted adult learner, someone who always did the homework, whose face lit up when they understood a sentence, would miss one lesson. Not because they were careless, because of a work deadline or family visit or illness or a trip they had booked months before. Nothing dramatic, just life. But the 2-hour lesson moved on without them. They would come back the next week already behind. They would try to catch up. They would smile politely, but I could see the panic on their face. And then, a few weeks later, their chair would simply be empty. They always apologized to me. I'm so sorry, Asuka. I just couldn't keep up. Sometimes they said it with tears in their eyes. And every single time I wanted to say, you have nothing to apologize for. You didn't fail because you were lazy. You didn't fail because you weren't clever enough. You didn't fail because you were too old. The course was simply not designed for the life you actually have. You might think, couldn't they just study the missed lesson at home? They thought so too. But Japanese is one of the hardest languages an English speaker can choose. 2 lost hours of new grammar, new vocabulary, new sounds, and new writing. That is a lot to rebuild alone from a textbook. The gap stays, and then it grows. I never forgot those empty chairs. With my background in linguistics, education, and psychology, I could see that the problem was structural. The course was built on one silent assumption: the student should come every week, as if they had no jobs, no families, no travel, no tired evenings, no unpredictable lives. And inside a traditional classroom, it was almost impossible to fix. One thought grew louder and louder in me. Somebody has to do something for these learners. And if no one else is going to do it, I will. So I left the university and began to design my own school. At first, I thought I would design a course for the people who had disappeared, the students whose chairs had gone empty. But when I sat down with my notes, something unexpected happened. The first question people usually ask when they create a language course is, what should I teach? Which textbook? Which grammar points? Which order? I asked those questions too. But they were not the questions that stayed with me. What came back to me were faces. 10 years of evenings, 10 years of students, and not only the students who had left. The ones who stayed came back to me too. The successful ones. Because when I really looked back, their path hadn't been smooth either. I remembered a man, for example, who drove a long way straight from work. In the first hour, his eyes were bright. He was ready. He wanted to learn. But somewhere in the second hour, I could see his concentration begin to slip. He faltered. He sat up straighter. He gripped his pen. But his brain had been working since 7 in the morning, and the lesson was longer than his energy could last. I remembered a lady with a hearing aid leaning forward in a large echoey room, trying to catch the difference between tiny Japanese sounds. I remembered students opening notebooks full of careful, beautiful notes, then whispering, "I'm so sorry, I've forgotten everything from last week," as if it was their fault. And I remember the flicker of fear when I invited someone to speak, because making a mistake in front of 20 people is no small thing at any age. None of these people was doing anything wrong. The difficulty was not inside them. It was built into the class setting. The long lesson, the large room, the echo, the pressure to speak in front of many people, the expectation that students could find hours to review at home somehow. Learning something they love as a busy adult is genuinely structurally hard. And I kept asking myself, how can I solve this? Then the question changed. Not what should I teach, but how can I design a place where a busy adult can actually keep learning? Not just the content, the structure. That was where everything began. I took the obstacles I had watched for 10 years, one by one, like puzzles that had to be solved. Number 1. One missed lesson ends everything. This was the obstacle behind every empty chair. Why does missing a single week destroy months of devotion? Because in a traditional language course, the live lesson is where the learning happens. Miss the lesson and the knowledge is gone, locked inside the room on an evening that has already passed. So I turned the learning structure upside down. In a traditional course, students come to class to learn new things and then go home to practice alone. I flipped that order completely. In my school, the learning happens before class through weekly tutorial videos, just a few minutes each. Students can watch one with their morning coffee, one on the train, one during a quiet moment at home. And if something is confusing, they can watch it again, 2 times, 3 times, as many times as they need. Because adults need time to digest the knowledge they learn. Then the live lesson is not the place where they frantically catch all the new information. It becomes the place for practice, using what they have already learned with a professional Japanese teacher listening, gently correcting the pronunciation and helping them say what they actually want to say. And this one change meant something very simple. If life interrupted them, learning did not have to end. If they missed a week, the door was still open. The knowledge was no longer locked inside the classroom on an evening that had already passed. The structure could hold them instead of leaving them behind. Number 2. The exhausted second hour. The second obstacle was energy. I kept remembering the student who fought to stay focused in the second hour. So I asked myself, why are we forcing busy adults to learn for 2 hours long in the evening? After work, after family responsibilities, after a long day of thinking, deciding, driving, caring, working. So I made the live lesson online and just 30 minutes long. I thought about the man who drove a long way after work. Online meant he would not have to spend the last of his energy getting to the classroom. I thought of the lady with the hearing aid leaning forward in that echoey room. Online meant the teacher's voice could come clearly through her own device. No large hall, no echo, no seat at the back. 30 minutes means the lesson ends before the energy runs out. Short enough that concentration can survive to the end. Focused enough that every minute matters. Complete enough the student can leave feeling, I did it, instead of, I barely survived. A shorter lesson is not a smaller lesson. It is a lesson designed to help the adult brain work effectively. Number 3, the fear of speaking. The third obstacle was fear. I remember the tiny moment before someone spoke. The pause, the nervous smile, the fear of getting it wrong. And I understood why. Practice means making mistakes, but making mistakes requires a place where mistakes feel safe. In a large classroom of 20 people, that is difficult. So I limited every class to a maximum of 5 students. 5, not 20 strangers. 5 familiar faces. Within a few weeks, it isn't a room full of strangers anymore. It is you and 4 peer learners, all making mistakes and learning together with a teacher who knows them. That changes everything. A small class does not just make speaking easier. It makes college and peer support possible. Number 4. My memory is too old for this. The fourth obstacle was memory. I heard this sentence constantly. My memory is just too old for this. But after years of watching my students, I knew it wasn't true. Their memory wasn't the problem. Their time was. Busy adults do not have spare hours to review everything. So what they learn on Tuesday quietly evaporates by Sunday. And then they blame themselves. Psychology has a well known answer to forgetting: spaced repetition. You miss the material again just before you would forget it, then again a little later, and then again. That is how memory becomes stronger. The problem is that doing spaced repetition by yourself takes time, planning, and willpower. It's difficult for busy adults to organize themselves, so I refuse to leave it to willpower. I build the repetition into the course structure itself. In my school, students meet the same learning materials 4 times without even trying. First, in the video lesson, then in the live practice, then in the review email at the weekend. Simply opening and reading it is a review. And then again in the warm-up at the next lesson. No extra hours found, no perfect discipline required. The structure remembers for you. Piece by piece, it came together. Learn at home in short video tutorials at your own pace. Practice for 30 focused minutes with 5 familiar faces and a teacher. Meet the same material again and again, not because you are forcing yourself to review, but because the structure reminds you gently through the week. I created a Japanese school where being busy is not a problem. Being tired is not a problem. Being older is not a problem. A place where you can enjoy learning Japanese even if your life is full of other commitments. I named it Communicative Japanese. That was years ago. Today, learners from around the world study with us, many of them year after year. One student told me the way the course is taught made it easier for me to study. I can't imagine learning Japanese anywhere else. Another said, I travel all the time, and the only reason I've been able to keep going is this course. When I hear words like that, I think of the empty chairs. I think of the people who love Japanese but were quietly left behind by the structure. And I feel, finally, this is the kind of classroom I had been trying to build. So now you know the story. 10 years in a classroom I loved, the empty chairs I couldn't forget, and the school I built to answer them. Here's why I wanted you to hear it. If you have ever studied Japanese as an adult and quietly given up, please take this one thing with you. It was not because of your ability. It was not because of your age. It was not because of your memory. It was not because you didn't care enough. Adult learners don't fail because they are weak. Very often, they are failed by learning structures that was never designed for their lives. And you deserved a structure built for yours. If this story felt familiar, if you have ever missed a class, fallen behind, blamed your memory, or wondered whether Japanese was simply too hard for you, I would like to show you the structure we built for learners like you. I explain it fully in a free online video seminar, how the lessons work, why they are designed this way, and how to tell whether communicative Japanese is the right fit for your life. You will find the link below in this video in the description. Watch it, not because you have to decide anything today, but because you deserve to know that there may be a way to learn Japanese that does not fight against your life. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. さようなら。